So my presentation's on the Cold War. The Cold War lasted from 1947 to 1991. There is some speculation between some historians on when it actually started. The Cold War, how did the Cold War start? So I want you guys to answer these questions. Take a moment and think what you think it is. Okay, and if you guys want your answer, well, here's the answer to it. It's A disagreement about political governmental views between both presidents of Russia and the United States. So basically what happened with that is that Russia was a communist, the United States really didn't like the communist idea of government. So here's another question for you guys. What came out from the Cold War? I want you guys to take another moment to answer this question, and we'll give you an answer in the next couple of seconds. Okay, and the answer to this one is all of the above. And we'll go into more detail about each one of these things in the next couple of slides. So what started the Cold War was basically World War II. So Russia and the United States fought together against the Allied powers. And so when they won, so Russia was actually had like this little grudge against America because so many of their people died because America came in late, and they felt that most of those deaths probably could have been prevented if America would have joined a lot earlier. And they've always had a tense relationship because of their different political views. America didn't like the tyrannic government that Stalin had. They believed that the people weren't free, and they didn't like that. And so that this all started with like the containment of like where the Cold War started. In 1946, in his famous long telegram, the diplomat George Kennan explained this policy. The Soviet Union, he wrote, was a political force committed fanatically to the belief that with the U.S. there can be no permanent modus vivendi, which means agreement between parties that disagree. As a result, America's only choice was a long-term patient but firm, vigilant containment of Russian expansive tendencies. So basically it was that they weren't going to help them anymore. They were fighting against the communist thing, so they weren't going to like help them out anymore. They weren't going to like do trades with them. So it was basically trying to contain them in their own country so they won't like let the communists expand. They fought against communism. So anybody that would start to have a communist government, they would try to contain that inside the country and would not try to expand that political view. One of the major things from the Cold War that was part of the Cold War was the atomic bombs. In 1950, National Security Council report recommended that the country should use military force to contain communist expansion, not only in Russia but anywhere they could find it, which called for a fourfold increase in defensive spending. So basically they wanted to continue on developing the atomic bomb that they created in World War II and to use it as a threat to contain Russia, which led to, I guess, the arms race. So Russia decided to create bombs and nuclear bombs to defend themselves and to attack anybody else if needed. One of the major things that a lot of people know about, but I guess a lot don't know about that it was part of the Cold War, was the space race. Like this was a big deal and a big major part of the Cold War. It was basically an egotistical, like I'm better than you kind of thing between Russia and the United States. So Russia was like started beating out the United States because in October 4th, 1957, the Soviet R-7 intercontinental ballistic missile launched Sputnik, and that's Russia's and the world's first satellite to orbit Earth, which was part of their arms dealers with nuclear bombs. And so in 1958, the U.S. launched their own satellite, the Explorer 1, so that they could also like have that same threat, so counteract, and it would just start this whole atomic war thing for decades, and so it would just be really dangerous, and everybody would basically die. And it was also the creation of NASA. Russia launched a man into space in April 1961, which kind of put a damper on America, so they went even more faster and harder to figure out how to go a step further than that to finally beat Russia in their space race, and that was to put man on the moon. And we finally did that on July 20th, 1969. Neil Armstrong from Apollo 11 mission became the first man to walk on the moon. And so because we were able to walk on the moon, we won the space race and for the Americans. The Cold War, most people don't realize that the Cold War affected Hollywood a lot, which affected the citizens. So it started out the atomic bombs and radioactivity with the whole like becoming monsters because of the radioactivity and the atomic bombs, and like this is what's going to happen to us if we get radioactivity poison, and like we should be beware, like avoid radioactivity at all costs, when in reality like zombie apocalypse because of like the whole atomic bomb destroying you. If you get radioactivity and poison, then you will most likely attain a disease where your skin will start falling off, like you'll get sick, you won't be able to survive, and it's just not pretty. So basically they're like, oh, this is what you're going to look like if you get radioactivity. The House, and then there was the House Un-American Activities Committee, which is basically a communist subversion in the US, and they wanted the communist view in America and forced people in the movie industry to renounce their political beliefs and testify against one another. And there were those who really did not want to go against their beliefs, and so more than 500 people lost their jobs because they were firing the left and right because they won't believe in the communist view, which started this whole war with loyalty oaths, trying to like help each other out and like tear each other down. Like, so inside the government they were like, oh, you need to tell us who is a communist or who believes in the communist thing, and like the loyalty oath, like you're going to be with the United States, like you're not going to go against and fight for Russia or like be a spy. For War Abroad, it wasn't just in America and Russia, it was between North Korea and Vietnam as well, which was the cause of North Korea and Vietnam War. These were the leading factors into them. And there was a U-2 bombing plane from the United States that was caught in Russia, which tore the rest of the friendship that we had left apart. So basically what happened is that the NASA basically promised, or the government promised the president, that no one would see the U-2 because it was too high to be tracked by the Russians. And if the pilot was even caught, like if it went down, it has a self-destruct button, and if the pilot went down, he was told to kill himself. But Russia basically threw it in the United States' face, saying that the U-2 was perfectly intact. The pilot for the U-2 was caught by the Russians and proved to be healthy and alive, and so basically they were just like, we have these, you can't lie to us, you've took the last straw, this alliance is over. And so the end of the Cold War started to die down when President Nixon was president, but it heated up right again when Ronald Reagan came back in. President Nixon was like, let's just try to figure things out and like work things through. And Reagan was like, no, we're going to fight against communists, like this isn't okay. So in 1989, every state that was a communist replaces its government with a non-communist one. So if they were a communist country, they were no longer communist except for Russia. In November of 1989, the Berlin Wall was destroyed because of the threat given by Ronald Reagan, saying if you don't bring this wall down, we'll basically tear it down. And in 1991, the Soviet Union itself had fallen apart and the Cold War was over. And here's a short video of JFK trying to be a motivational trying to make America feel safe again, and that we're basically safe. But it was also the tale of like how he was assassinated and how it tore America down, like apart.
And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country.
It was the Kennedys that, at least for me, were the political heroes that were part of my generation that inspired me the most. The world at large, not just the Americans, were energized, galvanized by direction of this highly charismatic, intelligent, very adept political leader, John F. Kennedy.
Let the word go forth from this time and place to friend and foe alike, that the torch has been passed to a new generation of Americans.
JFK was, in his inaugural speech, thinking about passing the torch to new generations. So it was a time of optimism. People thought that they were going forward with this young, handsome president and his young, beautiful wife and their children. They were sort of the ideal American family.
Well, I grew up an Irish American, and that meant something. On the bulletin board in our kitchen, there was a picture of John Kennedy. John F. Kennedy captured the imagination of Americans in general, but of course for Democratic Party adherents especially.
Kennedy brought the spark that inspired a new generation of Americans to view public service as something good. And then his personal style, his ability to communicate and use television.
We stand today on the edge of a new frontier, the frontier of the 1960s.
Kennedy's slogan of the new frontier was intended to really capture a certain kind of ambition, a certain kind of optimism, and this was meant to convey that the 1960s were going to be an era of change. Some of that was going to be technological change.
We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
Some of it was going to be spreading American influence throughout the rest of the world.
There are many people in the world who really don't understand, or say they don't, what is the great issue between the free world and the communist world.
So basically, Kennedy was a spokesperson that wanted to do right, and he was trying to help America to realize that we're here to do good and that we're going to put a stop to this communist and that we will continue to be a free people and that we will help those who are in need. And that is my presentation on the Cold War.